What's up, guys? We got ourselves a banger here today. Let's get into it.
I'm just going to talk about this comment that was left on one of my videos, and there's quite a few men that leave similar comments to this, and this proclamation that, this is why men are staying single. And this is obviously not all men, but there is a reason why men do this. And the reason that men say I'm staying single, which in other terms basically means I'm also willing to have a string of hookups that mean nothing to get my own needs satisfied, is that the reason that they do this is because they are not willing to face themselves. Any man that says, I'm staying single, is because they do not want to be in a situation that is causing them to face parts of themselves that have been denied, that have been repressed, where they are not taking accountability for the way that they show up in relationships. And obviously, if they're not in relationship or opening themselves up to the right person, they're not going to have this mirroring. And so by isolating and saying, this is why men are staying single, it's just basically another way of saying, I don't want to face myself.
Where do you come up with this shit? That is the cheesiest response to an honest question I've ever heard.
I mean, look, here's the deal. Men staying single isn't about avoiding self-reflection. It's about self-preservation. Modern family laws and society stack the deck against men. So why invest in a system that's likely to leave them broke, alienated from their kids, or even something worse? She's comparing not wanting it to deal with a toxic relationship with not facing yourself. I mean, lady, have you seen the divorce rates? 70% initiated by women. Men get raked over the coals in court. Men aren't running from themselves. They're running from a rigged game. And as for hookups, at least those don't come with a lifetime alimony bill, as long as guys keep it wrapped up. I think she still has more to say. Let's continue on.
Because unfortunately, in Western society and sort of in the modern world, men are becoming apathetic. They're becoming more feminized. And when wounded feminine energy shows up in men, it causes them to lack accountability, to not want to take responsibility, to be flighty, to not commit to things, which is automatically a massive turn-off to women that are in a healed feminine energy. And so the sorts of women that they would actually, thrive in relationship with, they're not attracting anyway, because they're not opening themselves up to the possibility that actually they're the ones that are responsible for the type of women that they're actually pulling in the first place. And so it becomes this vicious cycle. But when men say, that they're staying single as an act of, trying to control their circumstances, the reality is underneath that, they're feeling very much out of control. And because they don't have a language for communicating, what's going on underneath, because no man that is in a healed masculine energy is going to make this proclamation and decide that he's going to be single for the rest of his life. Because when you look at the way that obviously masculine energy thrives in life, it is to build, it's to continuously have something to move towards, to build some sort of legacy for self, and to feel as if they're creating a foundation, and building something. And so when you're saying, I'm cutting off my own growth, which is obviously what comes from being in a relationship anyway, they're automatically showcasing they're not actually in their masculine. Because to get to the end of your life and basically look back and say, I worked a job that was okay, that paid the bills, sat on my own money so I didn't have to pay anything, for women, and, got to the end of my life with a string of hookups. You look back at that as a legacy for a male, and the level of regret that would come with that is not going to feel good.
You're a victim.
I mean, look, a man wants to build a legacy, have a family, have kids, be able to pass on what he's created to them so they can continue to build on it. Not this hook up, hook up, hook up. Jeff Foxworthy did on one of his stand-ups a long time ago, basically date, 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 die. It's part of a skit. It was actually funny as hell. But as she's putting it, men are apathetic because they don't want to play emotional cleanup for women anymore. Give me an absolute break. Feminism told men to step back, and now women complain about it. And men staying single isn't about feminine wounds. It's about self-respect. And why build a legacy for someone who could destroy it with one phone call to a lawyer for any damn reason? And blaming men for attracting the wrong women? Please. It's her just projecting completely. Accountability isn't a one-way street, and if healed feminine energy means I'm perfect, you're broken, then yeah, men are going to opt out. And they're building legacies for themselves and not for ungrateful partners.
So if a man makes this proclamation, then this is what he really means. And Emotional fulfillment in life comes from the depth of intimacy we have with our partners, with the people that are closest to us. And when we cut ourselves off from that and the possibility of exploring that, we don't live an emotionally fulfilling life. We live a life that's filled with surface level distractions, surface level projections that don't actually lean into anything of depth. And so when a man says this, he's likely very much in his feminine, in an apathetic energy where he doesn't want to commit to things. And so within a relationship, he's not going to take accountability. This is obviously very different for a man that chooses to stay single until the right person comes along and works on himself in the meantime. This is an attribute of a healthy masculine male, and a man that's able to concentrate and focus his energy in such a way that's actually going to be really supportive and conducive once the right partner shows up, or once he's ready to take that step with the right partner. And this is the sort of dynamic and mentality that actually breeds and calls in soul connection as well, because the man is anchored into his masculine energy as opposed to dismissing the concept of relationship altogether, which is naturally a byproduct of being very wounded. And soul connection in and of itself can only come in when you are truly connected to yourself, whether you're male or female. So if you don't have a deep understanding of, your own psyche, the way that you operate, of your own triggers, where you're not taking accountability and reconciling that internally, you're not actually in a position to attract in what would be like a deep soul connection anyway. So all of these things are interconnected. They all play into one another. But the difference is that when you are connected to self, you see the mirroring and the divinity in others. When you are not connected to yourself, you see through the eyes of separation, of somebody else wanting to take from you, as opposed to being with an open and generous heart that actually allows you to feel the fullness of what a relationship can actually bring for you.
Cut her loose, dude. She's a handful.
What a bunch of psychobabble bullshit. Pretty much what I've said in the last two clips still carry over to this one. And she's talking about single men are wounded and incapable of intimacy. I mean, it's a cute narrative. But let's flip it. Modern relationships often demand men give everything while getting crumbs in return. So this emotional fulfillment, it's hard to achieve when you're treated as a utility. And the soul connection bullshit sounds great until it's weaponized to make men second guess their instincts. Men choosing to stay single aren't cutting off growth, they're protecting their sanity. You can find fulfillment outside of relationships, travel, hobbies, brotherhood. They're all less risky than betting on a partner who might bail when life gets tough. Men aren't wounded, they're strategic.
What happened to men pursuing girls? When was the pivotal moment that a man chose to not go after a girl anymore or put in any effort? It seems like guys can just put the bare minimum and not even really put in effort anymore. They don't really care to. Or they're like, why don't girls just go and make the first move and make the effort? When did it become a thing? Now it's like role reversal where they expect girls to be making the first moves, yearning for a guy and chasing him. That is, I feel like, the downfall of why it's so hard to meet someone, because men don't put in effort anymore or don't care to put in effort. And a relationship won't work unless the guy likes the girl just a tiny little bit more. He has to like her just the tiniest bit more for it to work in the long haul. So it would make sense if a guy really wanted to get to know you, that he would go leaps and bounds to get to know you. And when did that shift? Because back in my mom's era, if a guy wanted to take you out on a date, he had to go up to you, he had to get your number, he had to go through lengths to try to talk to you, even if you weren't interested at first. How my parents met? They met at a bar, and my dad asked for my mom to dance, and my mom was like, get out of here. She wanted nothing to do with him. If he had just left and listened to her, they would have never gotten married, they would have never had kids. But he was persistent. He wanted to take her out on a date so badly. He was like, what do I have to do to take you out on a date? She was working late their first date, so he went to her work, picked her up, prepped a dinner, took her to a park, just planned the whole thing. He wrote her poetry. He was yearning. How my aunt and my uncle met. My aunt was a dancer on a cruise ship, and he was the photographer. And he was persistent. She overheard him one night saying to his buddy, he was like, I'm gonna marry that girl. He had just met her. And now they're married, and they have 2 kids together. I don't hear anything like that now. Now we're praising eye contact. Now we're praising if a guy held a door open to us and smiled. That is what we're praising. It feels so backwards. I just wonder when it shifted, because I feel like that is the whole downfall of why it's so hard to meet someone now, because men just don't care anymore.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Got so much makeup on. Good God. Can't get past that. I don't know if anybody's seen American Horror Stories. I think the show is called. Was an episode on there where this girl was abducted and then they made her look like a Barbie doll. It's this guy and this kid type thing. I don't remember the whole episode. I do remember that specifically. That's kind of how that makeup being stuffed all up on her face kind of reminds me of. But let's kind of jump onto what she was talking about. It's like, when did men stop trying? I don't know, maybe when chasing women became a liability. Persistent men like your dad didn't risk false accusations, ghosting, or TikTok humiliation. There is a difference between pursuing and simping. And the way she's kind of describing it almost sounds more like they were simping than pursuing, especially for back in the day. But her comment about a man has to like a girl more. No, a man has to avoid a relationship where he's expected to do all the work. Dating used to involve effort from both sides, but now men opening a door gets called toxic chivalry, not praised. And don't blame men for being praised for these small gestures. They're adapting to a world where showing too much interest gets labeled creepy. Men haven't stopped trying, they've stopped wasting time. Well, guys, this was a doozy today. Men aren't apathetic, they're just waking up. The system, modern dating, and entitlement driven feminism have made relationships more risk than reward. Western women expect old school effort while offering nothing in return. And you want men to care again? Start by respecting their time, energy, and choices. Stop projecting, take accountability, and understand the risks men face today, which that clearly is never in any of their dialogues. And until then, men will keep going their own way, whether that's solo, with a passport in hand, or just focusing on themselves. So how about equal accountability and mutual respect? Otherwise, it's game over. Well, guys, that's the end of the video here today. If you like what you've seen, hit that like button, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Drop me a comment down below on what you think, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.